The rain had stopped 10 minutes ago, but the streets still glistened like oil under the broken street lamp. Jordan Walker pulled his coat tighter, not from cold. He'd stopped feeling cold years ago, but from habit. The kind of habit that kept you alive when being predictable got people killed. He shouldn't have been walking alone. His second in command had said as much 3 hours earlier, right before Jordan told him to go home. Some nights, the weight of running an empire felt heavier than others. Tonight was one of those nights. A shipment intercepted at the border, a lieutenant skimming off the top, a rival crew testing boundaries they shouldn't even see. And underneath it all, the persistent ache of knowing that no amount of control could fill certain kinds of empty. So he walked through the warehouse district where even the rats knew better than to scurry when he passed, where the silence felt like respect, or maybe just exhaustion. He'd built something here, something people feared, something people depended on. But walking these streets alone, Jordan sometimes wondered if he'd built anything at all, or just carved out a space where nothing else could grow. That's when he heard it. Not a sound exactly, more like the absence of one. A rhythm that didn't belong, shallow, uneven, desperate. The kind of breathing that comes right before the breathing stops. Every instinct he'd honed over 15 years told him to keep walking. Curiosity didn't keep you alive in his world. Involvement didn't keep you hidden. He'd survived by knowing when to look and when to be blind. But his feet slowed anyway. The alley entrance was a slash of deeper darkness between two buildings. He almost missed her, would have if not for the glint of something metallic catching the distant streetlight. A badge, torn uniform, dark hair matted with blood against brick. Officer Jessica Barnard didn't look like the cops who'd spent years trying to put him away. She looked like someone who'd been thrown away. The bruising around her eye was fresh, maybe an hour old. The blood trailing from her temple had started to dry at the edges, but still leaked when she breathed. Her ribs probably fractured from the way she held herself. Her hand pressed weakly against her side, where the fabric was soaked through. This wasn't a mugging gone wrong. This was an execution interrupted. Jordan's jaw tightened. He knew what this was. He'd seen it before. When cops cleaned house, they didn't use internal affairs. They used alleys. They used silence. They used the kind of violence that didn't leave witnesses. He should walk away. That was the rule. The only rule that mattered. Never involve yourself with law enforcement. Never give them a reason to look at you twice. Never. Her eyes opened. Not all the way. Just enough for him to see that she knew she was dying, that she'd already made whatever peace people make when they realized the system they believed in had put them here. She didn't beg, didn't plead, just looked at him with an expression that asked a question she didn't have breath to voice. Are you here to finish it? No, Jordan said, surprising himself by speaking at all. Her eyes closed again. Relief, maybe, or just resignation. He pulled out his phone. His thumb hovered over the emergency call button. Anonymous tip, gone before the sirens arrived. Clean, smart, survival. But something stopped him. Maybe it was the way her badge sat crooked on her chest, like even her uniform had given up. Maybe it was recognizing something in her face, the look of someone betrayed by the people they trusted most. Maybe it was just tired of being the man who only saved himself. Jordan put the phone away. He knelt beside her, ignoring the way his coat soaked through with her blood. This close, he could see the defensive wounds on her hands, the way her knuckles were split from fighting back. She hadn't gone down easy. "Can you hear me?" His voice came out rougher than intended. Her eyes opened wider this time. Fear flickered across her face when recognition hit. Not of his name, maybe, but of what he represented. The tattoos crawling up his neck, the expensive watch, the way he moved like violence was a language he'd spoken fluent since childhood. She tried to pull away, which would have been smart if she had anywhere to go. Easy. Jordan's hand steadied her shoulder, gentle despite everything. I'm not the one who did this to you. Then who are you? The words came out broken, each one costing her. Jordan hesitated. Lying would be easier, safer, but something about the moment felt too raw for anything except truth. Someone who knows what betrayal looks like. Her breath caught, not from pain, but from understanding. She searched his face, looking for the trap, the angle, the reason. Found nothing except a stranger who'd stopped when he should have kept walking. My own people, she managed. I know. Jordan cut her off before she could waste more breath. I can see it. Another shallow gasp, blood at the corner of her mouth now. Internal bleeding, probably. Minutes, not hours. He was out of time to decide. Jordan Walker had built an empire by knowing when to walk away, by understanding that mercy was a luxury that got you killed, by accepting that some people couldn't be saved, and trying only made you weak. But as he looked at Officer Jessica Barnard, dying in an alley because she'd chosen integrity in a profession that punished it, he made a choice that broke every rule he'd ever lived by. He lifted her into his arms. She was lighter than he expected, or maybe he was just stronger than he remembered. Her head fell against his chest, her breathing so shallow he had to focus to feel it. "What are you doing?" she whispered. Jordan didn't answer, because he didn't have an answer, not one that made sense. He just knew that if he left her here, some part of him, the part that had watched too many good people die for caring, would die with her. His car waited at the mouth of the alley, black and anonymous. He settled her into the back seat, watching her eyes flutter closed again, still breathing, for now. As he slid behind the wheel, Jessica's voice, barely audible. Why? Jordan looked at her in the rearview mirror, broken, betrayed, barely alive. Because someone should have helped when it mattered, and nobody did. He didn't say the rest, that he'd watched his own sister bleed out on streets like these, while cops looked the other way because she wasn't worth saving, that he knew exactly what it felt like to be discarded by the system meant to protect you, that maybe saving her meant saving some version of the man he used to be before the city taught him that mercy was for the dead. Jordan pulled out of the alley, heading toward the private medical facility he kept for emergencies the hospital couldn't know about. Behind him, Jessica's breathing hitched, then steadied. Still alive. For now, that was enough. Before we continue with what happens when Jessica wakes up in a place she never expected to survive, I need to know, where are you watching from? And here's the real question. If you found your enemy dying, left for dead by their own people, would you walk away, or would you break every rule you'd ever made? Drop your answer in the comments. Hit subscribe button now, because this story doesn't go where you think. And buckle up, because when a mafia boss saves a cop's life, the people who try to kill her will come for them both. What happens next will shock everyone who wears a badge. The leather seats absorbed Jessica's blood like they'd been waiting for it. Jordan's hands stayed steady on the wheel, but his mind raced through scenarios he'd spent 15 years avoiding. Police officer, dying, in his car. Every second he kept driving was another link in a chain that could hang him. She stirred in the back seat, a sound caught between pain and protest. "Don't..." Her voice barely carried over the engine. "Don't come closer." Too late for that, Jordan thought. He'd already crossed every line that mattered. "Stay still. You're bleeding out." "Let me." The defiance in those two words hit harder than it should have. Even dying, she wanted control over how it ended. Not happening. Her breathing changed, sharper, more aware. "You don't understand. They'll come back. They'll..." A cough cut her off, wet and rattling. Jordan's eyes found her in the mirror. "Who will?" Silence. Then, so quiet he almost missed it. "My own partner did this." The words settled into the car like a body. Jordan's foot eased off the accelerator without him meaning to. Partner. Not gang members, not criminals. The people she'd trusted with her life had decided it was worth less than whatever secret she'd stumbled onto. He knew that particular brand of betrayal. It had a taste. Bitter. Permanent. Your partner, Jordan repeated, making sure he'd heard right. Task force. Jessica's eyes were closing again. Dirty. All of them. Found out I was... Gunshots cracked through the night, distant but deliberate. 2 blocks, maybe 3. Jordan's training kicked in before thought did. Kill the headlights, take the next right, disappear into the maze of service roads he knew better than his own reflection. They were still hunting her, which meant they'd seen him, seen his car, seen a witness they couldn't afford. God damn it, Jordan breathed. He'd saved her life and signed his own death warrant in the same motion, the kind of mistake amateurs made, the kind that got you buried in unmarked graves. Jessica's breathing went shallow, then slower. Unconscious, finally. Maybe better that way. She wouldn't have to feel whatever came next. Jordan pressed harder on the accelerator, the private medical facility still 8 minutes out. Dr. Reeves wouldn't ask questions. He'd learned that lesson years ago. But he'd know. Everyone would know. The ghost of the city had gone soft over a cop with a badge and a death sentence. His phone lit up. Marcus, his second in command, the only person who'd tracked his movements tonight. Jordan ignored it. In the mirror, Jessica's face had gone pale as paper. Blood soaked through the towel he'd pressed against her side. She looked impossibly young, impossibly fragile, nothing like the hardened officers who'd spent careers trying to cage him. She looked like someone's daughter. The thought twisted something in his chest he thought had gone numb years ago. Why was he doing this? Jordan didn't have an answer, only the certainty that leaving her in that alley would have cost him something money couldn't buy back. Some last piece of himself he hadn't realized he'd been protecting. The facility's gates appeared through the rain. Jordan hit the button, watched them slide open, and drove into the one place in the city where death came to negotiate. Jessica Barnard had no idea she'd just traded one kind of danger for another, and Jordan Walker had no idea he'd just started a war that would cost him everything. The Mafia boss just made himself target number 1 to save a cop who might not survive the night. Her own people want her dead. His people will call him a fool. And somewhere out there, corrupt cops are loading weapons with both their names on the bullets. But here's what nobody knows yet. Jessica's got 3 years of evidence that could destroy them all. And Jordan, he just became the only thing standing between her and an unmarked grave. Comment below, would you risk everything for someone the world says you should hate? Hit subscribe because in the next chapter, Jessica wakes up and realizes the man who saved her life is the one her department's been hunting for a decade. This story's about to shatter every rule both of them ever believed in. White ceiling. Too white. Clinical white that smelled like antiseptic instead of blood. Jessica's eyes snapped open, her body jerking upright before pain slammed her back down. Her ribs screamed. Her vision swam. Somewhere close, machines beeped steadily, tracking rhythms she couldn't control. This wasn't a hospital. The room was too quiet, too private, the kind of place designed to keep secrets, not save lives. Armed men stood outside the glass door, not security guards, not police. They carried themselves like soldiers who'd forgotten which war they were fighting. Panic clawed up her throat. She reached instinctively for her weapon, found only bandages wrapped tight around her torso. Her holster? Gone. Her badge? Stripped. Even her uniform had been replaced with a loose shirt that wasn't hers. Someone had undressed her, touched her while she was unconscious, vulnerable. "You're awake." The voice came from the corner, smooth and unhurried. Jessica's head whipped toward it, ignoring the spike of pain. The man from the alley sat in shadow, glass of amber liquid in hand. But here, under actual light, she could see him clearly for the first time. Tattoos crawled up his neck like they were trying to escape something. dark eyes that tracked her movements with the precision of a predator who'd already decided she wasn't a threat. Expensive watch, expensive suit, the kind of presence that demanded space without asking. And she knew him. Not his face, his legend. Jordan Walker, the ghost, the man her department had spent years building cases against that never stuck. The one they said ran half the city's underground without ever getting his hands dirty. The one who made people disappear. Jessica's breath caught. She tried to scramble backward, but her body wouldn't cooperate. Where? Her voice cracked. Where am I? Jordan took a slow sip, watching her over the rim. Somewhere safe. Safe? The word tasted like a lie. I know who I am. He set the glass down with a soft click. Question is, do you know where you'd be right now if I hadn't picked you up? Dead. The answer hung unspoken between them. Jessica's hand moved toward where her gun should have been, muscle memory overriding logic. Nothing. Just empty space and the humiliating reminder that she was completely defenseless. Jordan noticed. Of course he noticed. Your weapon's evidence now, along with your badge, your radio, and whatever's left of your credibility. My credibility? Fury cut through the fear. You have no right. You were left to die in my territory, Jordan interrupted, his voice dropping lower, quieter, the kind of quiet that felt more dangerous than shouting. That makes you my problem. My territory, like she was a stray that wandered onto his property, like he owned the streets where she'd bled out. The horrible part was, in this city, maybe he did. Why didn't you kill me? The question came out before Jessica could stop it. The real question, the one that mattered. Jordan stood, moving closer, each step deliberate, controlled. He stopped just out of reach, studying her like she was a puzzle he hadn't decided to solve yet. Because, he said finally, because whoever put you in that alley wanted you dead more than I do, and I don't take kindly to people doing my job for me. A door opened. A man in surgical scrubs entered, older, gray at the temples, carrying himself with the weariness of someone who'd stitched too many wounds and asked too few questions. She shouldn't be moving yet, the doctor said, not to Jessica, but to Jordan, like she wasn't even there. She's tougher than she looks. Jordan's eyes never left her face. Dr. Reeves, tell Officer Barnard what you told me. The doctor's expression flickered, something between pity and resignation. Your department listed you as missing 3 hours ago. No active search, no press release, just missing. The words landed like bullets. Missing. Not kidnapped, not injured. Erased. That's impossible, Jessica whispered. They have protocols, procedures. They have a body to hide, yours, and they're hoping I already did it for them. Jessica just woke up in the most dangerous place in the city, under the protection of the man she swore to arrest. Her own department erased her like she never existed. And Jordan Walker, he's the only one who knows she's still breathing. But here's the twist nobody saw coming. Jordan's not keeping her alive out of mercy. He's keeping her alive because she knows something that could burn both their worlds to the ground. Drop a comment. If the people you trusted wanted you dead, would you accept help from your worst enemy? Subscribe now, because what Jessica doesn't know yet is that her 3 years of evidence just made her the most valuable prisoner Jordan's ever kept. And in this world, being valuable is the most dangerous thing you can be. The coffee was better than it had any right to be. Jessica wrapped both hands around the mug, needing the warmth more than the caffeine. Across the table, Jordan sat with the stillness of someone who'd mastered waiting. The safe house was nothing like she'd imagined. No weapons on display, no blood-stained floors, just expensive furniture and floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking a city that had tried to kill her 12 hours ago. You going to drink it or just hold it? Jordan's voice cut through her thoughts. Jessica took a sip, buying time. Her ribs still ached with every breath, but pride kept her spine straight. Why am I here? Because the alternative was a body bag. I mean, why am I alive? She set the mug down harder than intended. You don't save cops. Everyone knows that. Jordan's expression didn't change, but something flickered behind his eyes. I don't save dirty cops. You're not dirty. How would you know? Because dirty cops don't end up beaten half to death in alleys. He leaned forward, forearms on the table. They end up in nice houses with offshore accounts. You ended up with a price on your head. The certainty in his voice made her chest tighten, like he'd seen this play out before, like he knew the script by heart. My partner, Jessica started. Detective Marcus Chen, 8 years on the force, decorated, respected. Jordan slid a folder across the table. Also on the payroll of the West Side Distribution Network for the last 3 years. Jessica's hands trembled as she opened it. Bank statements, photographs, her partner, her friend, shaking hands with dealers she'd been building cases against, accepting envelopes, laughing. No, the word came out broken. Marcus wouldn't. Marcus coordinated the hit on you. Jordan's voice stayed level, but there was an edge now, something almost like anger. Him and 6 other members of your task force. They've been using your investigations to eliminate their competition while protecting their own suppliers. The folder slipped from Jessica's fingers. 3 years. 3 years of late nights and dead ends, and believing she was making a difference. 3 years of trusting Marcus with her life, and he'd sold it for cash. I don't understand. Her voice sounded distant, like it belonged to someone else. I was going after the dealers. If they were working with them, why not just redirect me? You were too good at your job. Jordan pulled out another photo. Jessica at her desk, surrounded by evidence boards. You started connecting dots they didn't want connected. Dealers to dirty cops to city officials, the whole chain. So they decided you were a liability. Jessica stared at her own face in the photograph, so focused, so certain she was fighting for something that mattered. That version of herself felt like a stranger now. They made it look like a gang execution, random violence, wrong place, wrong time. Your investigation would have been buried with you, clean, convenient. But you found me first. Wrong. Jordan's eyes locked on hers. They wanted me to find you. Mafia boss disposes of a cop in his territory. Perfect cover. They were counting on me to finish what they started. The implication hit like a fist. She wasn't just bait. She was a weapon pointed at both of them. So why didn't you? Jessica demanded. Why break your own rules? Jordan was quiet for a long moment. When he spoke, his voice carried weight she hadn't heard before. Because I've watched this city eat people who tried to do the right thing, and I got tired of pretending I didn't notice. Something cracked in Jessica's chest. This man, this criminal, had shown more integrity in one night than her entire department had in 3 years. What do you want from me? She whispered. Same thing you want. Jordan leaned back. To burn them all down. Jessica just learned her entire career was a lie. Her partner, the man she trusted with her life, set her up to die, and the only person offering her justice is the criminal she swore to destroy. But here's what neither of them knows yet. Jessica's hidden evidence isn't just proof of corruption. It's a death sentence for everyone involved, including the people at the very top who've been pulling the strings from the beginning. Comment below. If everyone you trusted betrayed you, would you team up with your enemy for revenge? Hit subscribe because the next chapter, Jessica and Jordan are about to retrieve evidence that will start a war, and the people hunting them, they're already loading the guns. Sometimes the only way to expose the truth is to trust the person everyone warned you about. The storage unit sat in a part of town where security cameras had learned to look the other way. Jessica's hands shook as she keyed in the code, muscle memory fighting against 3 days of trauma. Anyone follows you here? Jordan stood behind her, scanning the empty corridor with the focus of someone who'd survived by noticing what others missed. Never. Jessica's voice was steady, but barely. This was my insurance policy, the one place Marcus didn't know about. The door rolled up. Boxes lined the walls. 3 years of her life cataloged, labeled, hidden. Bank statements, wire transfers, photographs of handshakes that should have been arrests, audio recordings that would have ended careers if anyone had bothered to listen. Jordan stepped inside, his expression darkening with each box he examined. Jesus Christ, Barnard, you documented everything. That was the job. She pulled out a folder, her hand steadier now, purpose overriding pain. I thought I was building a case. Turns out I was building my own coffin. A car door slammed outside, then another. Jordan's hand went to his waistband. We've got company. Through the gap in the door, Jessica spotted them, 2 patrol cars, unmarked sedan, not responding to a call, hunting. They're watching my storage unit. Her stomach dropped. They knew. They've always known. Back exit, now. Jordan grabbed 2 boxes, moving with the efficiency of someone who'd escaped tighter corners. Jessica snatched the folder marked City Officials and followed. They hit the back alley as the first officer reached their unit. Jordan's car materialized from a side street, driven by a man with scars that told stories he'd never speak aloud. Go, Jordan ordered, shoving Jessica into the back seat before sliding in beside her. The car peeled out as shouts erupted behind them. 3 blocks later, safely anonymous in traffic, Jessica opened the folder with trembling fingers. Her breath stopped. Judge Patricia Morrison, Councilman David Hayes, Deputy Mayor Robert Carlson, faces she'd seen on billboards and campaign posters, now captured accepting cash-filled envelopes from the same dealers she'd been investigating. This isn't a corruption ring. This is the entire government. Jordan leaned over, studying the photographs, his jaw clenched. You weren't getting too close to their operation. You were getting too close to them, the people who run this city. No official channel will touch this. The reality settled over her like concrete. They are the official channels. Back at the safe house, they spread the evidence across Jordan's dining table, each document more damning than the last, each photograph another nail in a coffin neither of them might escape. Jessica's phone, the burner Jordan had given her, buzzed. A news alert. Officer Jessica Barnard, missing and endangered. Department sources suspect foul play. Her own face stared back from the screen. The department she'd bled for was now using her disappearance as a smokescreen. They're setting the narrative, Jordan said quietly. By the time anyone finds you, you'll be the victim or the villain. Either way, they win. Glass shattered. The window exploded inward as bullets tore through the room. Jordan tackled Jessica to the floor, his body shielding hers as gunfire erupted. She heard his men returning fire, heard someone scream, heard the wet sound of bullets finding flesh. Then, silence. Terrible, ringing silence. Jordan pulled her up, checking for injuries with hands that weren't quite steady. You hit? No, I'm... Jessica looked past him and her voice died. One of Jordan's men lay motionless by the door. Young, maybe 25, blood pooling beneath him in a shape that looked like surrender. Marcus, Jordan called to another guard, get her to the secondary location, now. What about you? I'm making sure they understand what it costs to come after what's mine. Jordan's voice had gone cold, empty, the voice of a man who'd forgotten how to feel killing. But his eyes, when they met Jessica's, held something else entirely, something that looked almost like fear, not for himself, for her. 2 of Jordan's men just died protecting a cop they should have hated. Jessica's evidence proves corruption reaches the highest levels of government, and the people hunting them, they've got unlimited resources, unlimited reach, and absolutely nothing left to lose. Here's the truth neither Jessica nor Jordan wants to face. They can't run forever. They can't hide. And going public might save the city, but it'll definitely get them killed. Comment: would you sacrifice everything to expose corruption, knowing you probably won't survive it? Subscribe now, because what happens next will force Jordan to choose between his empire and the one person who made him remember what honor feels like. And when killers come in the night, sometimes the most dangerous thing you can do is care about someone. The television screen showed Jessica's face on every channel. Same photo, her academy graduation, smiling like she still believed badges meant something. The headlines varied, but the message stayed consistent. Mafia boss Jordan Walker suspected an officer's abduction. They're good, Jessica murmured from the window of their 3rd safe house in 2 days. Making you the monster makes me the victim. No one questions the victim. And when they find your body, I'm already guilty. Jordan stood behind her, close enough that she could feel his presence without touching. Your department's been playing this game longer than you've been alive. Outside, news vans circled like vultures. The public ate it up. Heroic cop, ruthless criminal, a city holding its breath. What they didn't know was the cop was standing 6 feet from the criminal, and neither of them could afford to blink. Jessica's reflection in the window looked like a ghost. My mother called my old number 17 times today. The department told her I'm missing, possibly dead. Jordan's jaw tightened. Want me to get a message to her? And tell her what? That I'm alive but can't come home because the people who swore to protect me want me in the ground? Her voice cracked. That the only reason I'm breathing is because a man she's been told to fear decided I was worth saving? Jessica, don't. She turned, and the space between them felt smaller than it had any right to. Don't tell me it'll be okay. We both know how this ends. Headlights swept across the window. Jordan moved first, pulling her away from the glass as tires screeched outside. Not police. Worse, the kind of vehicle that doesn't announce itself. Basement. Now. Jordan's voice had gone tactical, empty of everything except survival. They moved through the dark house like shadows. Jessica's ribs screamed with each step, but adrenaline muted the pain into background noise. Behind them, the front door exploded inward. The basement was concrete and cold. Jordan sealed the entrance, then pulled a panel free from the wall, revealing a tunnel that smelled like earth and old secrets. How many of these do you have? Jessica whispered as they crawled through darkness. Enough. His hand found hers in the black, steadying her when the tunnel narrowed. I've been preparing for war my whole life. Just thought I'd be fighting different enemies. They emerged 3 blocks away in an abandoned factory that still carried the ghost of better days. Jessica's hands were shaking, not from fear this time, but from rage. I can't keep running. She turned on him, months of exhaustion and betrayal finally breaking through. Every safe house is a cage. Every escape is just another prison. Wanna go back? Jordan stepped closer, voice dropping. Walk into a department that wants you erased? Make yourself an easy target? I want to fight. Jessica's eyes burned. I want them to know I'm alive, that I know everything, that I'm not going to disappear quietly just because it's convenient for them. Jordan's jaw tightened, studied her face like he was seeing her for the first time. Blood in her hair, bruises on her jaw, fire in her eyes that trauma hadn't managed to kill. You're not what I expected, he said quietly. What did you expect? Someone who'd break. His hand lifted, almost touching her face before he caught himself. Someone who'd take the easy way out rather than stand in the fire. Jessica's breath hitched. They were too close. Close enough to see the conflict in his expression, the war between what he'd always been and whatever he was becoming because of her. Jordan, don't. She turned, and the space between them felt smaller than it had any right to. Don't tell me it'll be okay. We both know how this ends. The window shattered. Bullets carved through the air where Jessica's head had been a second before. Jordan pulled her down, his body covering hers as gunfire turned the factory into a war zone. When the shooting stopped, Jordan's phone buzzed. A message from an unknown number. We know you have her. Give her back and we'll let you live. Jessica read it over his shoulder, laughed without humor. They really think you're that stupid. No, Jordan deleted the message. They think I'm that smart. Smart enough to know a losing fight when I see one. And are you? Jordan looked at her, really looked at her, at the woman who'd rather die fighting than live running, who'd trusted him with her life when everyone else wanted her dead. Yeah, he said finally. I'm smart enough to know we can't win by playing defense. So what do we do? Jordan's expression hardened into something Jessica recognized, the look of a man who just decided to burn his own world down. We go hunting. The entire city thinks Jordan kidnapped Jessica. Her own mother believes she's dead, and the corrupt officials hunting them just sent a message, surrender or die. But here's what they don't understand. Jessica Barnard didn't survive betrayal and bullets just to hide in basements. And Jordan Walker didn't build an empire on fear just to run from cops who've already sold their souls. Drop a comment. When running only delays the inevitable, do you hide or do you fight back harder than they ever expected? Subscribe, because the next chapter changes everything. Jessica and Jordan are done running. They're about to do the one thing their enemies never saw coming. Sometimes the most dangerous move is the one that looks like surrender. And sometimes the person you're not supposed to trust is the only one who won't let you fall. The safe house had no electricity, just candles and silence, and the sound of rain against windows that had seen better decades. Jessica sat on the floor, back against the wall, watching Jordan check the perimeter for the third time in an hour. "You can sit down," she said quietly. "We're safe, for now." Jordan paused at the window, his silhouette sharp against the gray light. Safe is a myth people tell themselves before they die. Comforting. He turned, and something in his expression had softened. Exhaustion, maybe, or the weight of carrying secrets too heavy for one person. "You want comfort, I'm the wrong person." "I don't want comfort." Jessica pulled her knees up, ignoring the protest from her healing ribs. "I want to understand why a man who's built his life avoiding cops is about to die for one." Jordan was quiet for a long moment. Then he crossed the room and sat beside her, close enough that their shoulders almost touched. Close enough that she could see the scars on his knuckles. "I had a sister," he said finally, "younger, smarter than me by miles. She wanted to be a teacher." Had. Past tense. Jessica stayed silent. "She got caught up with the wrong crowd, started using. I was too busy building my empire to notice until it was too late." Jordan's voice went flat, but Jessica heard the grief underneath. "She overdosed in an alley 3 blocks from where I found you. Cops came, saw who she was related to, and decided she wasn't worth saving. Left her there, like trash." Jessica's chest constricted. "Jordan, I got there 20 minutes later. Still warm, still..." He stopped, jaw working. "I could have saved her if someone had called an ambulance, if someone had cared enough to try. But they didn't. Because in this city, who you are matters more than whether you live." Understanding crashed over Jessica like a wave. "That's why you saved me. That's why I couldn't walk away." Jordan looked at her, and his eyes held a pain that recognition couldn't heal. "You were her, alone, abandoned, left to die because you were inconvenient." Jessica's hand found his without thinking. His fingers laced through hers like they'd been waiting for permission. "I became a cop because I believed in justice, real justice, not the kind that gets bought or traded, the kind that protects people who can't protect themselves. And instead, you found a system that protects itself." Yeah, the word tasted bitter. "My first year, I watched my training officer take money to lose evidence, told myself it was an isolated incident. By year 3, I realized isolated incidents were the only kind that existed." Jordan's thumb traced circles on her palm. "Why didn't you quit?" "Because quitting meant they won, meant every person counting on someone to care about them was wrong to hope." Jessica's voice cracked. "I thought if I documented everything, built an airtight case, someone would listen, someone would care. And they tried to kill you for it. They tried to kill me for believing the badge meant something." She turned to face him fully, their faces inches apart. "You know what the worst part is? You, the criminal, the ghost, the man I was supposed to fear, you're the only one who treated that badge like it mattered." Jordan's free hand lifted to her face, hesitating. "Jessica, don't tell me this is impossible," she breathed. "Don't tell me all the reasons this is wrong. I know them, I've listed them, I don't care anymore." "You should care," but his thumb brushed her cheekbone anyway, tender, despite the violence those hands had committed. "I'm not a good man. You're a better man than anyone wearing a badge in this city." The kiss happened like gravity, inevitable, desperate. 3 days of proximity and trauma and forbidden understanding finally breaking through every wall they'd built. Jordan kissed her like she was the last good thing in a world gone rotten. Jessica kissed him back like he was the only honest person left. When they broke apart, both breathing hard, Jordan rested his forehead against hers. "This doesn't change anything," he said hoarsely. "We're still hunted, still marked for death." "I know. And when this is over, if we survive, there's no happy ending. Your world and mine can't coexist." "I know that too." Jessica's hand tangled in his shirt. "But we've got tonight, and tomorrow we expose everything. So let me have tonight without thinking about all the ways we're both going to lose." Jordan pulled back just enough to search her eyes. Whatever he found there made his decision. He kissed her again, and this time neither of them pretended it was anything except exactly what it was. Two people stealing moments from a future that would probably kill them both. They just crossed the line they swore they'd never cross. A cop and a criminal, falling for each other while the entire city wants them dead. Tomorrow, they go public. Tomorrow, the war begins. Tonight, though, they're just two people who found something real in a world built on lies. But here's what neither of them is saying. Going public means one of them probably won't survive. Maybe both. Comment below. If you knew tomorrow might be your last day, would you regret the night you spent loving someone you weren't supposed to? Subscribe now, because the next chapter, Jessica records testimony that will destroy everyone, and Jordan makes a call to the one federal agent who might actually listen. Sometimes love is the cruelest thing that can happen, because it gives you something worth living for right before you have to risk dying. The federal building's press room held 200 people and enough cameras to capture every flicker of emotion. Jessica stood at the podium, her hands steady on the evidence folders that would detonate like bombs. Agent Torres stood to her left, FBI, vetted clean through Jordan's network, one of the few people in law enforcement who still remembered what justice looked like. To her right, stacks of documentation that represented 3 years of her life and dozens of ruined careers. "My name is Officer Jessica Barnard," she began, and the room went silent. "1 week ago, members of my own department tried to murder me. The explosion was immediate. Cameras flashed, reporters shouted questions, but Jessica kept talking, her voice cutting through the chaos with the precision of someone who'd rehearsed this moment in every nightmare. She named names: Detective Marcus Chen, Sergeant William Foster, Lieutenant Sarah Brandt. 18 officers total, each one captured on film accepting bribes, coordinating with dealers, orchestrating the execution of anyone who got too close. Then she went higher. Councilman David Hayes, Judge Patricia Morrison, Deputy Mayor Robert Carlson. Photographs projected on the screen behind her, handshakes with drug lords, envelopes changing hands, luxury purchases that couldn't be explained by government salaries. "This isn't about a few corrupt cops," Jessica said, her voice steady despite the cameras capturing her bruises, her healing wounds, the visible cost of truth. "This is about a system that's been rotted from the inside, a system that protects criminals while destroying anyone with the courage to expose them." In a hotel room 3 miles away, Jordan watched the broadcast with an expression carved from stone. His phone had been ringing nonstop, his lieutenants, his contacts, everyone demanding to know why he was letting a cop burn the city down. "Boss," Marcus, his second in command, stood in the doorway. "Your name's not on that list. She protected you." "I know." "Then we disappear, right now, before federal attention makes us the next target." Jordan didn't answer. On screen, Jessica was detailing corruption that reached into courtrooms, police precincts, city hall, each revelation another nail in coffins that powerful people would kill to keep sealed. "She's signing her own death warrant," Marcus continued. "The people she's exposing, they're not going to jail quietly. They're going to come for her with everything they have." "I know that too." "Then what are we still doing here?" Jordan's eyes never left the screen. Jessica's face, defiant and exhausted and beautiful in a way that had nothing to do with features, making sure she survives it. Within 2 hours, arrests began. Federal agents storming precincts, courtrooms, council chambers. Marcus Chen taken in handcuffs from his home, screaming that Jessica was lying, that she was working with criminals, that this was all a setup. Judge Morrison escorted from her bench mid-trial, her composure cracking as cameras captured every moment. Deputy Mayor Carlson attempting to flee before agents blocked his private jet. The city erupted. Protests, investigations, every news outlet broadcasting Jessica's testimony on loop. The cop who'd survived assassination and exposed an empire of corruption. And through it all, Jordan's name never appeared. Jessica had kept her promise. His involvement stayed buried beneath federal seals and classified testimony. But promises couldn't stop what was coming. Late that night, Jessica sat in a federal safe house, watching the news coverage of her own destruction of the system she'd once believed in. Agent Torres entered quietly. 18 arrests so far, 4 more in the morning. Federal prosecutors are calling this the biggest corruption scandal in the state's history. Torres paused. You did it, Barnard. You won. Jessica's laugh was hollow. This isn't what winning feels like. Her phone buzzed, a text from an unknown number. They're coming for you tonight. Everyone you exposed. They've got nothing to lose now. Get somewhere safe. Haya. Jessica's hands trembled. She texted back, Where are you? 3 dots. Then, making sure you survive this. No, Jessica whispered. She stood abruptly. I need to leave, right now. Torres blocked the door. You're under federal protection. Leaving is... He's going to get himself killed protecting me. Jessica's voice cracked. The people I exposed, they know he helped me. They'll come for him first. Who? Jessica met Torres's eyes. The only person in this entire city who gave a damn whether I lived or died. Across town, Jordan was already moving. His safe houses compromised, his network scattered, his empire crumbling under federal scrutiny and the attention Jessica's testimony had brought. But none of that mattered. What mattered was the intelligence his remaining contacts had gathered, a coordinated strike planned for dawn. Corrupt officials, desperate and cornered, pooling resources for one final move. They couldn't let Jessica testify in the trials, couldn't let her evidence send them to prison. So they decided to eliminate the problem permanently. Jordan made a call. Position everyone at the federal building. Jessica's their target. Boss, we're down to 12 men. They'll bring 50, maybe more. Then we hold until federal backup arrives. We won't survive that long. Jordan's voice went cold. I didn't ask if we'd survive. I asked if we could hold. Silence. Then, yeah, we can hold. That night, Jordan stood on a rooftop overlooking the federal safe house where Jessica was held. His phone buzzed with a message from her. Don't do this. Whatever you're planning, don't. I can't lose you. He typed back, You won't lose me. You'll remember me. There's a difference. Jordan, please. You gave me something I thought I'd lost, made me believe mercy wasn't weakness, that maybe some things are worth dying for. His fingers hesitated over the keys. Thank you for that. He turned off the phone before she could respond. Dawn was 3 hours away. Jessica just destroyed the most powerful people in the city. 18 cops arrested, 4 councilmen, 2 judges. The corruption empire is crumbling. But victory came with a price she never agreed to pay. Because the people she exposed, they've got nothing left to lose, and they're about to launch a coordinated strike that will force Jordan to make the choice he's been avoiding: save himself or sacrifice everything to protect the woman who made him believe in something beyond survival. Comment. If protecting someone you love meant certain death, would you run or would you stand and fight knowing you won't walk away? Subscribe now because the next chapter is the final battle. 50 killers against 12 loyal men. federal backup 20 minutes out, and Jordan Walker standing between Jessica and the people who want her silenced forever. Sometimes, love isn't about the future you build together. It's about the sacrifice you make so they have a future at all. Dawn broke gray and merciless over the city. Jessica stood at the safe house window, watching shadows that shouldn't move. Agent Torres was on the phone coordinating security rotations, oblivious to the fact that security didn't matter when death had already bought its way inside. The first explosion took out the front gate. Torres dropped the phone, weapon drawn. "Get to the basement, now." But Jessica was already running, not down, but toward the sound of gunfire erupting like a symphony of endings. Through the window, she saw them, mercenaries in tactical gear, corrupt cops who'd traded badges for blood money, all converging with the singular purpose of erasing her testimony. And standing between them and the building, Jordan. 12 men against 50, mathematics that didn't lie. Jessica's scream died in her throat as she watched Jordan's defensive line open fire. Bodies dropped on both sides, the air filled with smoke and the copper smell of violence doing what it did best. Jordan moved through the chaos like he'd been born for it, precise, lethal, utterly calm. He'd positioned his men at choke points, turning overwhelming numbers into a kill box. But Jessica could see what he couldn't from ground level. They were being flanked, mercenaries circling toward the building's weak point, toward her. Jordan saw it the same moment she did. Their eyes met across the distance, hers filled with horror, his with resignation. He knew what he had to do. "No," whispered Jessica, then louder, pounding on the bulletproof glass. "No!" Jordan pulled a flare from his belt, ignited it, and threw it toward the flanking team, brilliant red light painting him as the target, drawing every gun away from the building, away from her. "What is he doing?" Torres breathed beside her. "Saving me!" Jessica's voice broke. "He's saving me!" The mercenaries pivoted, recognizing the greater threat. Jordan Walker, the ghost, the legend, the man who'd evaded law enforcement for 15 years, standing in the open like a declaration of war. He emptied his clip into the nearest attackers, dropping 3 before return fire found him. The first bullet caught his shoulder, spinning him. The second punched through his side. Jordan stumbled but didn't fall, still firing, still buying seconds Jessica didn't want at this price. His men rallied around him, creating a wall of bodies and defiance. They fell one by one, loyal soldiers who'd followed their boss into hell because he'd earned that loyalty by never asking them to die for something he wouldn't die for himself. Federal sirens wailed in the distance. Backup, finally. 10 minutes out, maybe 8. Jordan didn't have 8 minutes. Another bullet hit him, chest, center mass. He went down on one knee, blood spreading across his shirt in a pattern that looked like surrender. But he kept firing, kept drawing attention, kept being the target instead of letting Jessica become one. Their eyes met again through the smoke and chaos. Jordan smiled, actually smiled, like dying for her was the best decision he'd ever made. Then a final shot cracked through the morning. Jordan fell. Jessica was moving before Torres could stop her, sprinting through the building, down the stairs, into the war zone that had become Jordan's grave. Federal agents were arriving, overwhelming the remaining mercenaries, but Jessica didn't see any of it. She saw Jordan. Lying in rain-soaked pavement, blood pooling beneath him in shapes that screamed finality. His eyes were still open, searching the smoke until they found her. Jessica dropped beside him, her hands pressing against wounds that wouldn't stop bleeding. "No, no, no! Stay with me! Federal medics are here! They're coming! Just hold on!" "Jessica!" His voice was barely sound. Blood bubbled at his lips. "You're alive!" "Because of you!" Tears streamed down her face, mixing with rain and his blood. "You stupid, heroic! Why would you do this?" Jordan's hand found hers, grip already weakening. "Because some things worth dying for." Each word cost him. "You worth it." "Don't you dare!" Jessica's sob tore through the gunfire, still echoing around them. "Don't you dare leave me! Not now! Not after everything!" "Already gone." But his thumb brushed her cheek one last time, tender despite the violence that had defined his life. "Tell them Tell them I... Tell them what? Jessica leaned closer, desperate to catch every syllable. Jordan's eyes held hers, and in them she saw everything they'd never have time to say, every moment stolen, every possibility murdered by circumstance and bullets and corrupt men who'd forced them into impossible choices. Tell them Ghost finally found something real. His hand went slack in hers. The light left his eyes like a door closing on everything Jessica had just begun to understand about mercy and honor and the brutal truth that sometimes the best men die trying to prove they're more than their worst choices. Jessica's scream cut through the morning, raw, grief-soaked, the sound of a heart breaking in real time. She pulled Jordan's body against her, rocking him like maybe movement could reverse death, like maybe holding tight enough could keep his soul from leaving. Around them, federal agents arrested the surviving mercenaries and corrupt cops. The conspiracy was broken. Justice, finally, would be served. But Jessica couldn't feel victory. She could only feel the warmth leaving Jordan's body, could only see his final smile, could only hear his last words echoing in the space where her faith in anything good used to live. You were worth it. The rain fell harder, washing his blood into the street where he'd built his empire and lost his redemption. And Jessica held the man who'd saved her life by ending his own, crying tears the city would never see on the news. Jordan Walker died in the rain, taking bullets meant for Jessica. 12 loyal men followed him into death because he'd taught them that some things matter more than survival. The corruption network is destroyed. Jessica's testimony will put dozens in prison. Justice won. But she lost the only person who showed her that badges don't make heroes. Choices do. Comment below with a heart if this gutted you, because we're not done yet. The final chapter reveals what Jessica does with the hollow victory Jordan bought with his blood. Subscribe now, because sometimes the hardest part isn't dying for something, it's living with what that death cost. And Jessica Barnard is about to learn that surviving doesn't always feel like winning. 6 weeks later, the city looked the same, but felt different. Like a wound that had been cauterized, scarred, but no longer bleeding. Jessica stood before the television in her new apartment, watching the verdict scroll across the screen. Marcus Chen, guilty on all counts. Councilman Hayes, 40 years federal prison. Judge Morrison, stripped of her bench, awaiting sentencing. Deputy Mayor Carlson, life without parole. 23 convictions total, the biggest corruption takedown in the state's history. The city called it justice. Jessica called it Tuesday. Her phone buzzed. Another interview request. Another ceremony invitation. Another chance to be celebrated as the hero cop who'd single-handedly exposed institutional rot and survived to testify. Single-handedly. The word tasted like ash. She deleted the message and grabbed her coat. Rain was forecasted, but that felt appropriate. Everything felt appropriate when you were visiting a grave that didn't exist. The cemetery sat on the outskirts, where the city pretended poverty didn't live. No fancy headstones here, just markers with names and dates, stories compressed into numbers that didn't capture anything true. Jordan's grave wasn't marked at all. Federal authorities had quietly buried him after the siege. No ceremony, no recognition, just a plot number and a ledger that no one would ever search. His criminal empire had been dismantled, his assets seized, his name scrubbed from everything except classified reports that would stay sealed for decades. The official story called him a gang leader killed during a coordinated criminal assault on a federal facility. No mention that he died protecting a cop. No mention that his sacrifice had bought the 23 convictions the city was celebrating. No mention that Jordan Walker had been the most honest person Jessica had ever known, despite never pretending to be good. Jessica knelt on the wet grass, placing flowers on unmarked earth. White roses, the only thing Jordan had ever mentioned liking, once during a conversation about his sister. "They're celebrating," she whispered to the ground. "The whole city, parades planned, reforms implemented, federal oversight ensuring it never happens again." Her voice cracked. "And they'll never know what you were, what you did, that none of this would have happened without you." The rain started, soft at first, then harder. Jessica didn't move. "They promoted me. Detective Bernard now, badge and everything." She laughed without humor. "Funny how the badge matters again now that the people who made it meaningless are in prison. You taught me that, you know, that symbols only mean what the people carrying them decide they mean." A flashback hit. Jordan's face in candlelight, his hand in hers, his voice saying some things are worth dying for, like he'd already made peace with what was coming. Jessica's chest heaved. "I would have chosen different. I would have chosen you alive and the system still broken. Is that selfish? Probably. But you made me selfish, made me want things I wasn't supposed to want, made me believe mercy could exist in darkness." She pressed her palm flat against the grass, imagining she could feel something beneath. Warmth, presence, anything except the cold truth of decomposition. "I'm supposed to move on. That's what Torres keeps telling me. That I did my job, exposed corruption, made the city safer. That your death meant something." Jessica's tears mixed with rain. "But it didn't mean what they think it meant. It meant I survived, and you didn't. And that's not justice. That's just loss." The wind picked up, carrying the smell of wet earth and distant traffic. Jessica stood slowly, her knees muddy, her flowers already wilting in the rain. She walked back toward her car, but stopped at the cemetery gate. One more place to visit. The alley where it started looked smaller in daylight, cleaner. The city had repainted, removed the dumpster, installed better lighting, erasing evidence that anything terrible had ever happened here. But Jessica remembered. She touched the brick wall where she'd been bleeding out, where Jordan had found her, where he'd made the choice that would eventually kill him. "Badges don't make heroes," she whispered to the empty alley. "You taught me that. Choices do. And you chose mercy when the world expected you to choose survival." Her phone buzzed again. A news alert. Detective Bernard to receive Medal of Valor for exposing corruption network. Medal of Valor for testimony bought with someone else's blood. Jessica closed her eyes against the rain. The city had been saved. The system was healing. Honest cops were rising through ranks no longer controlled by corruption. Everything she'd fought for had been achieved. But standing in the rain, alone, mourning a man the world would only remember as a criminal, Jessica understood the cruelest truth about justice. Sometimes winning costs you the only thing that made victory worth having. She turned from the alley, pulling her coat tighter against the cold. The city lights flickered on as evening fell, thousands of lives going on, unaware that their salvation had been bought by a man they'd never know. Jessica walked into that city, carrying Jordan's memory like a weight she'd never put down. Saved, victorious, forever broken by the man who taught her that redemption sometimes looks like sacrifice, and heroes don't always survive their heroism. The rain fell harder. Jessica walked alone. Jessica Barnard saved a city, 23 convictions, federal reform, a broken system forced to heal. But she lost the only person who showed her what honor looks like when it's not wearing a badge. Jordan Walker died protecting a cop who would have arrested him in a different life. The city will never know his name. History won't record his sacrifice. But somewhere in the rain-soaked streets he once ruled, his choice echoes. Sometimes the people the world calls criminals show more integrity than those we trust to protect us. Sometimes doing the right thing costs everything. And sometimes the greatest acts of courage are the ones nobody sees, the ones that don't fit the comfortable narrative about heroes and villains. So here's the question this story leaves you with. Would you trust someone from the other side? Would you risk everything, your career, your safety, your life, for someone the world says you should hate? Would you make the choice Jordan made, knowing it would cost you everything, but save someone who mattered? Drop your answer below. Hit subscribe if this story reminded you that morality isn't about titles, it's about choices. Share this with someone who needs to know that redemption is real, even when it demands the ultimate price. Because sometimes justice requires blood. Sometimes love means sacrifice. And sometimes the truest heroes are the ones history forgets because their truth was too inconvenient for the world's comfortable lies. Jordan Walker died nameless, but his choice to save one wounded cop changed an entire city. Remember that the next time someone tells you people can't change, that criminals can't be heroes, that mercy is weakness. Sometimes the most dangerous thing you can do is choose compassion when the world expects cruelty. And sometimes that choice is the only thing that makes us human. This is the end of Jessica and Jordan's story, but the question it asks stays with you. What would you sacrifice for someone you're not supposed to save?